Hey, everybody, welcome to this edition of Turnaround Marriage Live. And today we want to talk about why the 5 love languages, though a good book, is simply not enough. They are simply not enough. And yes, we love Gary Chapman, got some great content in his books. And the 5 love languages themselves are valid and they make sense and they can be helpful, but they themselves are not enough to turn around a marriage. They simply are not, are they?
That's true. Because, Scott, how many couples have come to us with needing help for their marriage? And they're like, but I'm speaking her love languages and it's not enough. And I'm being super nice. And her heart, she just keeps turning away from me. She doesn't even want me to touch her anymore. And they're in that frustrated or hurt place because either their wife or their husband, who, depending on who you're talking to, the love languages hasn't been enough, right? And so we want to just talk about some of the reasons why that is and what you can do instead. And so the first reason, it's really obvious that
it's not obvious. It is.
It's obvious to us, but
yes.
Maybe not obvious in the culture we live in because our culture's gotten this so warped about genders. But here's the thing: males and females have very different primary needs. And so if we impose the 5 love languages, but we're not taking into account whether someone is female or male, what their wiring, their God-given wiring has bent them to do and want and desire and need, we're going to miss the mark every single time, because a woman's need for physical touch is going to look very different than a man's need for physical touch, right? A woman's need for words of affirmation is going to look very different than a man's needs for affirmation, because we're wired differently. Women need to be pursued. They want to feel loved. They want to feel protected and cherished. And men really want to feel admired. They want to feel honored. And so if we're just doing a love language, it's like, well, I'm taking the trash out. She's acts of service and she's not appreciating it. I don't know why this isn't working. Well, are we taking into account the male and female differences? And the lie of the enemy and the lie of our culture is there is no difference. You can pick. There's no biological, psychological, emotional, or spiritual differences between men and women, which is just ludicrous when you look at how different we are, right? And so, we could go on and on about that, but that's one of the first things we wanted to hit on.
Absolutely. And the next thing is not too dissimilar. If bitterness is built up between the two of you, it doesn't matter what love language you're trying to show them. The bitterness is the primary problem, right? Like the built up disconnection, the built up feelings of animosity that you have towards one another. This is a primary problem. And it's like, if I'm taking out the trash and I'm ticked off, while you might appreciate that I'm taking out the trash, you certainly don't like my attitude, right? Like this is not lending for you if there is bitterness, and you can't fake it. You can't fake, hey, I'm so happy, I'm not bitter anymore as I'm washing the dishes. Like, of course you can't. So bitterness, if that's in the background, you need a lot more than just the 5 love languages.
Right. You got to get to the root of that bitterness and root it out. Yeah. And the third reason that we've noticed is really if there's poor communication, the love languages are not going to fly, because if I'm trying to speak the words of affirmation to you, but I'm coming at you with faulty communication, I'm just being blunt, or I'm trying to be honest, but it's cutting to his heart, he is going to misinterpret that every single time. He's going to hear me say what I'm not saying. How many of you have said we're like speaking 2 different languages? I'll say something and she'll interpret it as something totally different. And it's because your communication is very different. It's part of going back to being wired differently as male and female. Like we have very different communication styles and we hear and respond very differently. So if we don't understand those differences and we're talking to a man as if he's a woman, it's just not gonna land, and vice versa is true. And so we've got to be able to fix the root problems inside the communication in order for those love languages to be able to be enjoyed, especially if words of affirmation is your primary love language.
And, I think back like in the late 80s, early 90s, like all the youth and all the teenage stuff, there had like a lot of like the quizzes that you need to take to figure out if you're this or you're that. And sometimes people can think, oh, this is just going to be the formula that I need to figure out what is missing. And the fact is, we're complex beings. We're complex individuals. We're made in the image of God. And there is no pigeonholing us into just 5 ways that we feel and express love, because there's so much more to the story. Like there might be wonderful things from our past of what maybe your mom did for your dad, or maybe there was things that your mom did that were not so nice to your dad that might trigger you. Like there's so many things that we carry with us that it's not just us, but also our spouse. And so there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than just, hey, I just need to give her some time today, quality time. Well, what kind of quality time? What does that look like even? And if there are a lot of hidden meanings or meanings behind it that we don't even recognize, well, we just have to recognize that we're complex, and in the sense that maybe even not just in our upbringing, but previous relationships that we've been in, or early on in our marriage, or even times that I might have hurt you. Like this might be coming up. Yeah. Well, I'm doing the trash. Like, what else do you want from me? Well, there's a whole lot more that's going on behind the scenes, almost always.
Right, because that baggage needs to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
And those hurts need to be healed for sure. Another reason we've noticed is that Christians are given higher standards, right, than just the world. And so when God calls us into marriage, it is a covenant. And when he calls us as believers to follow him, this is more than just checking off the list. Well, I spoke the words of affirmation, and I, did the quality time, and I, gave you Saturday morning. What else do you want? This is a heart attitude. This is a bending of our heart right. Posture. Am I loving you the way Christ loves the church? Am I honoring you the way the church honors Christ? Am I putting you above myself? Am I being selfless? And am I exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit? Right? Am I forgiving 70 times 7? Am I following Christ more than I'm following you, but also honoring you in the midst of that? Like right. We as believers, we are called to a higher standard. We're going to be held to account, right? And it's not that we need to be perfect. None of us can. That's why we need Jesus so much. His perfection covers us. But guys, we're not here to just kind of like say the sinner's prayer and like go on our way so that we have, fire insurance or whatever. We're called to follow Christ. We're called to pick up our cross and carry it. Yeah. And in the context of the marriage, how do we live out the gospel with a sinner that lives with me, a sinner, right? And so sometimes you need help navigating that, because there can be these things that have been built up and hurt you over time.
Right.
And if you're not regularly confessing and repenting and turning back to God and to your spouse, the marriage is going to be rocky. I mean, it just will.
It's so true. And you're spot on about that, Rach. And the fact is, the 5 love languages, there's validity to them, but it's simply not enough. And I've been in different groups, and I've seen people talk online, and we try to see what people are thinking and saying out there. And I've seen over and over again, people that think it's all I need is to implement the 5 love languages, leaving out even God's design for marriage and what that should look like. And sometimes there's, a lot of confusion about what people are saying, but here is the heart of it. The 5 love languages unto themselves are not enough because of all the things that we've listed today. Yeah. And there's actually quite a bit more.
Sure.
But we see over and over again, people are like, they're getting on the phones with us, and they're like, I've been giving my wife quality time, or I've been doing the acts of service, and it's not working. Like, that doesn't surprise me, because when you're trying to do those love languages and you're giving the one that is your spouse and they told you that, and it's still not connecting, it's like, well, it must be them. They're at fault. And then you're getting frustrated, and they're getting frustrated, and everybody's getting frustrated, and it's not working. And it's not just the love language. The love language itself isn't the problem. It's so many of the other things behind the scenes. Indeed, even that frustration. So guys, what we're saying is we need a different approach. What we're saying is there is no cookie cutter solution most times. And usually a book is not going to be enough to radically change the dynamics. One of the biggest things that you need, and that's one of the things that our clients tell us over and over again, it's like we needed someone to see what we didn't see. We needed someone to encourage us and to kick our rear ends a little bit, and to help us to see the dynamics in our own lives and marriage and our thinking, and how we were not serving one another, how we were actually hurting each other. We didn't even realize it. We didn't even see it. Yeah. We needed someone else to come and step into that. And you're not going to find that in a book. And you're not going to find that in a counseling session where you're just talking about all the things that you're angry about. It just doesn't change anything.
Right. So if you're looking for a holistic approach, and maybe you've tried doing retreats and gone to counseling, or you've read a lot of marriage books and your shelves are full, but still you guys are struggling. Maybe you've tried implementing the 5 love languages and been really frustrated because you're not close. There's a lot of arguing, or you guys are growing apart, or there's just a lot of negative feelings and negative, mindset, and negative even energy between the two of you. If that's what you're facing, and if you're looking for a holistic approach, we really want to invite you to go ahead and check out the video below. We're going to post the link, and really honestly, it's the 5 simple shifts that Christians can make to turn their marriage around quickly, to recover connection, and to fall back in love again. And guys, this has helped at least 20,000 Christians. It's encouraged them in their walk with Christ. And honestly, we've been able to walk very closely hand in hand with a couple of hundred Christians to radically change the dynamics in their marriage and heal longstanding wounds and hurts between them. And even when only one person's willing to do the work, when both of you are willing, it's a home run. But if one person's willing, we're here to give you hope that there is so much you can do.
Absolutely.
And I know some of you might think this is not fair. Why should I have to change? Why should I have to work on it? He's the one who needs to. She's the one who needs to. Well, if that's your mindset, you're probably going to stay miserable, honestly. The only person you can change is yourself with God's help. And so that's what we walk our clients through is helping them to do that. And you'll see those 5 shifts that you can start making today to get your marriage turned around. And so you can go to turnaroundmarriage.live, check this free masterclass, the 5 shifts. And honestly, it can be the best 38 or 40 minutes you could spend on your marriage.
Absolutely. So yes, guys, take this to heart, and even go before God's word. And as you're reading the word, it is so clear that God is a standard for us. He's got a different way of looking at things. And we have got to get back to his design, not only in general for marriage, but specifically for you and your circumstance. And that's where we love to step in and help, not to only to help you to shift, but also the strategy can change with the Lord's help as well. So if you definitely check out the 5 shifts at turnaroundmarriage.live. And until next time,